Ready? Okay. This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at WZRD Mayor Roger C. Agpawa, Mayor of Markham. How are you today, Mayor?
Doing wonderful, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. First of all, Mayor Agpawa, uh, you recently uh, sent a request for a pardon about some time that you did for something that happened in which you have totally served all your time, paid all the fines, but there is still you're still facing discrimination even though you have paid your debt to society. Could you describe, if you can, what happened uh, uh, and what it is that is still happening to you even though you have repaid your debt to society?
Well, I first of all, I want to say again, let me say thank you for having me to part of the program today. These things are very vital to certainly to me, but it's become something that's been more important to me for many others that have not been afforded the same opportunity as myself. I was able to get my rights restored from a felony conviction, a federal felony conviction here in the state of Illinois for a crime that I had committed some 25 years ago, thereabout, and had paid the debt back to society as I should, and I was supposed to, and I did that, and certainly took the punishment that uh, society renders through the law. And once you do that, you would figure that you would be afforded the to be able to move on from that if you took that penalty and the punitive things that were against you seriously, as I did. But what has happened here in Illinois and it's across the country is that certain rights are not afforded back to you after you serve these felony convictions. Felons seem to be in a system or a class or a caste system of their own. I, Even after, again, that in my case, I was involved in being charged with the federal felony mail fraud, in which I was a part of a matter in which I received and took checks that did not belong to me, knowingly took those checks and cash and split proceeds with someone that I should not have done that with. And I, since that time, paid that debt back. I had to pay $20,000 back in restitution. I was given 3 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. And after serving that time, I was still told that I would not be able to serve as an elected official in local government anywhere in the state of Illinois. I would be allowed to vote, but I would not be able to serve any elected position, and certainly federally, you're not allowed to carry any firearms and for the rest of your life. So that privilege is taken away from you. And regardless that I did not have a violent crime, I had a violent, non-violent offense, but still I could not. I don't have the right to bear arms anymore. That right was taken. So that's just one thing here in Illinois as far as the voting rights are concerned. But uh, you know the in this case, I applied for the job application to be the mayor, and that application consisted of being elected by people, which they're a little different on how they do their screening. Thank goodness they were here in my community, and by being raised here from my childhood, people had known who I was and known that I had one of those worst days of my life, and I shouldn't be totally judged on that one day of my life for the rest of my life. because what happens with the felony convictions anywhere is that it's almost as though you do have a life sentence after you're done with your sentence, with maybe the possibility of legislator or lawmakers' parole. And what that means is that if they change the law, then you may have an opportunity to have some of your rights given back to you. Even internationally, convicted felons uh, have to check in certain countries. In some states, there is some requirement that you may have to make some contact for that, but that's really what there's a disenfranchisement to people who commit felony convict. Uh, they commit crimes that they get convicted of felonies, and so it just becomes a little bit unfair at some point that when do you let people, when do you let them go and let them free from what they've done once they paid their debt to society, as myself. Again, for me, I was able to get my rights restored by the governor for the state of Illinois, which had not been done in some 50 years here in Illinois, but it is done around the country. Now, the federal law, the pardon office, they do in fact suggest, since federal pardons are difficult to get, they're almost like a needle in the haystack to get or to find them, they suggest that you go to your local government and you request to have your rights restored in that state, as I did. So that is even on your pardon application when you file for federal clemency. They say, well, you might want to do this while you're trying to get through the federal process. So what does this, do or mean for me? It means that as in my elder years, which they are certainly upon me, I have to be able to navigate life like anyone else and shouldn't have to continue with something that I had taken care of some 25 years ago.
How long have you been mayor of Markham?
This is my second term. I'm running for my third term. Currently, I'm unopposed, so I'll be seeking my third term, and but I've got 8 years for the two terms.
And did you have to get your rights restored before you ran?
I actually got my rights restored after I ran and won the election. I really ran, constitutionally, believing that I had my rights, and challenged the law here in Illinois about that. Since then, they have adjusted the law. So we've made good stride here in Illinois about giving second chances to those who have committed offenses and have proven to be good citizens to go back into society and be able to serve their communities as I have.
When you were running, did the people know of your conviction and they knew you too, correct? And they still voted for you?
Absolutely. And I think that I'm very proud of my community. I think that they had taken a position about that they felt equally strong. I think the climate and the temperature and the environment at that time was very ripe and prime for something that happened with me, because I think that my story resonated with people just not here, but just about everywhere where people were hearing the story were saying, gee, why don't you let that guy go? I always humbly say, I'm so grateful that Markham, elected a guy like me and gave me a chance. And I think that that's really why this has worked out so well, is because, I really wanted to be a good ambassador for what had happened. I think that I've been a firefighter all of my life. So I knew about different causes that you fight for and where you go out to fight for other people's lives to do things. And I didn't feel any less passionate about this new matter that really changed my life, but I knew it affected so many other people as well. So I really wanted to fight about that.
Right. By how much did you win for the board elections, if you still remember, like the percentage of?
Well, honestly, the first election, pretty was actually it was pretty historic to tell you the truth. It wasn't historic on my part, as the, you know, you always have you do have a group of naysayers, and you have a group of people who really want to go at you and keep you out. And so there was a guy that ran against me as a write-in, and I think he got an historic amount of write-in votes. Equally as, and out of fairness, as I said that the climate and temperature was right, there were still just as many people who wanted to fight the other way. We live in that kind of world and country, and people have different points of view. But I think that it was a pretty close election the first time, but I think I won very convincingly the second time around, and I got some 80% of the vote. When it was tallied, I won every precinct in the community. So it was pretty, I think I beat most of my opponents, my nearest opponent, maybe 10-1. So it was pretty convincing the way that people were very settled about where we were heading in the community. That not only my proven record of being a firefighter and a fire chief for many years, that was something I had done in government, but what I was able to prove to them about taking care of them and making their quality of life in Markham better for other people. And I've just got a passion for it. I think I'm using all the fire service years of passion and moving it over to government to take care of people now.
Yes, we'll talk about your accomplishments as mayor later as well. For
Sure.
for that election, the first election, even the second one, did you and your opponents, did you challenge each other's petitions?
Yes, in fact, after I got my rights restored during the first election, I didn't have a big challenge over petitions the first election. The state's attorney's office in Cook County challenged whether I could serve according to the law and filed a quo warranto to have me removed from office because I could not take a sworn oath of office according to law.
Was that Lisa Madigan?
At the time, it was Kim Fox.
Oh, okay.
So, so I temporarily for 18 months was disabled as the mayor-elect of the city, and had to fight and get the governor to look at old law in Illinois. And his legal team eventually looked at the law and found that it was valid. And he believed that I was a good candidate for him to restore my rights of citizenship here in the state of Illinois for the first time in about 50 years. And it allowed me to immediately get into office 18 months later and serve my term of my first term in office.
So during those first 18 months, who was in charge of Markham? There's a daily business that needs to get done.
Yeah, so the city council had taken position to put a pro tem mayor in place from among the aldermen. So they had taken one of the senior aldermen from the bunch, the group, I should say, and they elected for that person to chair the meetings and chair some of the daily operations of the city from day to day. It's ironic that I actually worked part-time prior to being the mayor. I still was working part-time for Markham in a couple of different capacities, so they allowed me a little room to help with some of the things that needed to happen. I wasn't the mayor, but they did, from time to time, ask me periodically about which way we ought to do something. And that worked for a little while, but it didn't last very long. That's just the nature of once someone else, starts running something, they get pretty comfortable with it. So um, I had to contend with that for a little while too before I got in office. But eventually we got it squared away where I got in. And then I went to my second term, and my petitions were challenged. And they were challenged, uh, believe it or not, the petitions that in my oath of office, as far as the governor's right, giving me the right to serve and restore my rights, was challenged. So the governor's signature to restore my rights in Illinois was actually challenged by my petitioner. The electoral board um, upheld the decision for me to serve. The circuit court as well upheld the governor's signature for me to serve as in having the power to restore my rights. And later, it was taken to the appellate court, where appellate court decided that the governor did not have the right to restore my rights of a federal conviction. Even though this was dealing with Illinois law, the appellate felt different about it. And they, out of the three, there was a dissenting vote that the governor's signature has the authority in Illinois to give you rights to vote, or if you were to lose it, rights to, if you lose your rights in Illinois for gun ownership or any kind of clemency that's affected by Illinois law, such as being a elected official, the governor has the right to restore that. And so the appellate got it wrong because it was appealed to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court later upheld that the governor's signature is powerful to the point of restoring rights of citizenship in Illinois, to restore all rights of citizenship to me or anyone that the governor would afford that to for under Illinois law.
So you are requesting that the President-elect Trump pardon you. So what would that pardon? What additional rights would, if you get that pardon, what additional rights would you have that you do not have now after Governor Pritzker's pardon? After Governor Pritzker's restoration of your rights?
Well, it was actually Governor Rauner at the time
Oh,
that restored my rights. But what it would
okay.
do is, I would not have any international hindrances, but certainly here nationally, should I say if I decide to retire in the next 4 years, maybe after this term, and I go to Florida or Alabama or Mississippi or anywhere down south and some parts of maybe even Nevada, my voting rights are not taken from me. Florida, I believe, is a state. Alabama, Mississippi, convicted felons have certain limitations in various states across the country. And then again, should I want to serve on a park board or a municipal board of some sort in government in any other state, I'd have to go apply to get my rights in that state the same way I did in Illinois. What a federal pardon does is it just cuts through all that and gives you that right without having to continue to apply. The thing that probably, these are places where you wish maybe you were a little younger, but so you can go fight about these things to make it make sense. Because again, why should anyone have their rights kept from them once they're done with their sentence? You know, the stigmatism of being a felon never leaves you unless you get a pardon to that gets that away. It doesn't say you didn't do what you did. It just restores what rights you may have wherever you go. And it would be, it would be equally recognized if you went from state to state. You don't have to try to get your rights back. But again, the irony of all this is that why do we make people serve sentences and then they come out and they don't have their rights and they paid the debt? It just doesn't make good sense of why we hinder people. And if we are going to do that, then we should, there's different levels of felonies, just like there's different levels of misdemeanors. And some people don't know that because most of the places you go, anywhere USA, um, a felon is a felon is a felon as far as anyone's concerned. They just, they don't differentiate what the crime is. Me being a convicted felon is no different than a convicted felon that may have committed, a murder. So, and that's, of course, until you get into the conversation about, I took, I certainly didn't help the insurance industry by taking checks that didn't belong to me. I'll never say that wasn't, that was right. It was a very wrong thing because it affects things you don't even see. But does it equate, to me, there's not any difference. I would agree. What's the difference between a big sin and a little sin? Nothing. They're all the same when it's wrong. But I think that if a person who committed a heavier crime than I did, they get more time, or they get more restitution, or they get more community service that they would have to give. Or if they took a life, then maybe they wind up having to pay with their life in prison. But it just isn't fair for anyone to serve the sentence and still come out and have to continue to serve it.
Well, not only are your rights taken from you, if you don't get them restored, there's so much discrimination too that you could face. And then, if if are you also trying to get the legislation to change this, or are you just trying to pursue the federal pardon?
Well, I'm working with I've worked with and I'm working with more groups that I've recently met about advocating for rights for many people who need second chances. I'm a big proponent of second chances and trying to give people those opportunities. And I'm in a position where we hire people who have backgrounds and we have to do vetting. So I understand a vetting process when you have people who have had offenses, but I think that we need the system needs more attention to that. We need to work out what that is. It just doesn't, and the same thing when it comes down to federal pardons. I wouldn't make light of pardoning. Pardons at the White House are for those that may need a pardon to have their life given back to them from death row. Or, in a joking way, it's the pardon a turkey at the White House. But pardons should not be for people who have gone to jail, or they've been sentenced to different types of, uh, different types of sentences that they serve, and then they have to go get another condition to set them free all over again because they can't navigate, the landscape of life and go on because if they apply, an application somewhere, they check the box that I've had a background or a felony conviction. Well, that might just be enough for someone to not even want to look any further. It may not matter that they've got a degree or may not matter how much education or experience, but they may look at how we've taken the stigmatism again of what we've said about felons. They're all the same. And really, they're not by far. And there's literally, millions of people who have felony convictions, in this country. And I think that clemency in this country, and definitely at the federal level, needs to be worked on. And that's why I said, wishing I was so much younger to help go after something. I'm going to do my best to advocate for trying to fix the federal system and work with some of the lawmakers and legislators. But I have worked with advocacy groups locally, and I've also done that here in Markham with City Hall with trying to help with employment matters and that type of thing. And I will be working with state officials. I have a meeting tomorrow to talk about restoration of rights with the governor's office, even on tomorrow.
What ramifications are there if let's put it this way, if a person does not get a pardon, then that means that they cannot run for a public office, or they are able to vote, but are there any other rights that are taken from them besides serving in a public office and just serving in public office, right? The voting does get restored to them, or some, and for some crimes, no.
Well, no, for the law varies from state to state. So, one of the places that where that could be referenced, there's a uh, organization called Collateral Consequences, and they really track a lot of different laws that support many people who have had convictions and how that affects them across the country, whether it be voting, whether it be holding public office, and whether, it deals with some of their employment rights. A lot of different things so there's other things that maybe I haven't quite experienced, but I do know that at least a couple, I think the biggest, I'm not really, I have to honestly say, I'm not so worried about clearing my name. I think that for me personally, Markham has told me, and I'm pretty satisfied with what Markham said and what the governor said. Um, I think that I think that I'm probably just fighting for my old age now. That to say, hey, listen, I think in this country I've worked 49 years in the fire service, and then I've been devoted for the last 8 years taking care of people in government to lead them as a mayor. So I think you get to the point to say that, gee, it'd be nice in my retirement if I could run across the country and not have that stigmatism on my life.
Well, President-elect Trump, he now has a felony conviction too, but that doesn't seem to be a factor in affecting his uh, uh, his office.
Correct. That's what here in Illinois, again, it's different. In some other states, it's different. Even federally, all those offices, the president, the senators, and the congress people, they definitely can, in fact, um, they definitely can run for public office. Um, but in Illinois, um, the only public office you cannot run for is local government. So
Okay.
you can be a state senator or a state legislator or even the governor in Illinois.
And you can also run for federal office in Illinois as well.
Correct.
Wow.
But you cannot run local. They made a law that affects mayors and local government.
Mm. And that law has been in effect for how long? Do you have any idea?
Well, I believe it's been around, I want to say probably 40, 50 years for that,
Mhm.
at least. Um, and maybe there's been some changing to that law, probably, 25 years ago, they may have made different tweaks to it, but it has become more prevalent of discussion. And right now, State Representative LaShawn Ford is working to remove it. He and Danny Davis, Congressman Danny Davis, have worked together to really try to send a message here in Illinois. Let's get rid of that law that hinders those that have served and let them be available to people to make a choice after they've served their sentences from their convictions.
So hey, when you let's talk about your accomplishments. So what were you running? What was your platform? And then were you able to achieve uh, how much of your platform?
Hmm. Well, I think, when you grow up in a community, um, and you actually see the community change or make a different turn, um, and it's not a favorable one, um, it almost gives you a personal platform, if you will. But it definitely gives you a general one about what needs to happen in that community and trying to turn it around. It's so unfortunate that I'm in South Cook County and I've been surrounded by some of the best communities in the state of Illinois at one point and in the Southland that have taken some of the worst turns you'd ever could imagine in these communities. And it's just unfortunate that happens. Um, but I was in seeing that and growing up in the Southland and seeing and knowing all the history. And I can mention names such as Harvey, Illinois, and Riverdale, and Dalton, Homewood, some doing better than others, and then Markham as well, having its history of different things that have been there for it. And then it goes kind of awry where that community is not governed or managed well. And then you see where it deteriorates the housing and where people move out and move away. And certainly uh, South Cook County has been a place where there's been a lot of change racially over the last 40 years, very easily the last 40 years. And
So are you talking about the or about blight, or are you talking about the other gentrification?
well, I would say a little bit of both because that's really what has happened. What has happened, um, even though people took flight and left the community, what they called white flight back then, it didn't mean that those who took over the reins of the community, and most of that being Black or African American, that they shouldn't have held the reins tightly to take care of it. It doesn't make, anybody that knows me knows that I was obviously not a choir boy because I got in trouble like anybody else in life. But I say that to say that the last individual that um, here in Markham that I replaced, in fact, was that mayor was convicted of bribery and wound up going to prison. And that's just it's just unfortunate that things like that occur. But uh, you know, again, that was probably some of the catalyst for my platform and wanting to restore good government. Um, And, again, here's a guy who ran with a blemish, but it isn't like I didn't have a message along with having the blemish. I spoke truth to people about that Markham had a problem and it needed to be cleaned up, and there were some things that needed to be eradicated about what was going on in government. And we have been successful in restoring good government. When I took over, we had about $11 million in debt. Markham currently has no debt. We don't have any debt, and we were able to bring in business. We were able to bring in jobs, and we were able to bring in. In fact, we have one of the largest Amazon facilities in the country, which has over 3,000 employees there. So we've been able to supply jobs as well as we've been able to stabilize housing and get better infrastructure and more grants and more involvement from state and county officials to get involved with, applying for things that can help make a community strong. And we've been able to do that. And we've worked on different things again, with housing, which has been here as of late. But one of the things that was absolutely huge was, I think aesthetically, we had to make people see that Markham was a good, clean, and safe community. And it's one thing to talk about it, but it's different to drive through the community and see the differences. And you mentioned the word blight. There was plenty of blight at one point, and we were able to go after that and really start cleaning up a lot of bad properties and demolishing dilapidated homes and things that would give the community a lot of eyesore. And we've been able to go after that. And Markham, has a upswing now as a result of that.
What are you up against? So that you want to get your federal rights restored to you. So what are you up against? Is it just that it's like a needle in the haystack to get the pardon, or are there people who do not want those rights to be restored to convicted felons?
Well, I would almost think that, it's kind of unfortunate. It's, we send such a subliminal message to people who have created, or I mean, who have had offenses. And, I think that our country in some places, can be a little hypocritical. As much as I love our country and wouldn't have any other country but here, um, we have our woes and our ills about what we are not fair about. And I think that um, human nature strikes every country, even the good United States, is that we as humans want to have one up on another person if we can have it, to be one up or some places put our thumb on someone else. Just the nature of us wanting to be superior about humans. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what race. That's just human nature to want to be in charge or have the ups. And so I think that that is an issue and a problem that uh, there may be some people that indirectly they really don't care. And a lot of people I found in government, um, they don't care until it affects them. And then they understand once it hits home and it's close to them. Um, I have I believe just as I did back in the 70s, I come out of that era as a young man, and I had that same fire about clemency and rights and pardons for other people, including myself as I get older, that we should not have to go through these things. So I think that clemency in itself in this country has to be addressed and has to be fixed. So whoever the president is, whether it's this president or any other, until I'm not able to function, I think it's only right to keep after trying to get not just mine, but continue to fight for changes about the process. That is very important that we have a more streamlined process other than that of other than the president being able to immediately pardon people off of death row, because that's really where the power of any governor or any president would be, to commute a sentence, to get someone out of jail that's maybe been jailed wrongfully, held in prison or in prison for something, or if they've been wrongfully convicted and they need to be let free from being sentenced to death. And I think that I was very relieved that so many people ahead of me got their sentences commuted. Maybe some people might have felt some people didn't deserve this, that, or the other for who they may be, but some of them did. And I'm glad that, and I think that it was more urgent for them to get clemency than for me to get a pardon. I think that when you're in jail, the urgency is a little different than someone like myself who has at least some of his rights given to him. I'm not totally incapacitated or disabled, such as someone that might be behind bars and has lesser of a right or means to their life. So I'm pretty understanding about how these processes should work, and I'm pretty fair, about what I think we should be going after. And we definitely need to not tell people after they come out of jail or after they serve sentences that we want them to carry this albatross around their neck. For some people, I've talked to people through the years, had messages sent to me. Matter of fact, I had someone I didn't know send me a letter many years ago when they heard about my story, and they said that they were to the point of suicide, of what walking around in life as a felon meant, way, 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 way after this was over for them and the conviction that they had, which again wasn't murder or anything to that magnitude, because I think, taking someone's life is, and murder is probably the ultimate thing you can probably do. I would imagine, but this person did less than that, but yet had years and years of places where they felt hopelessness about their lives. Actually, the person became quite successful and opened their own business and was very, very successful because it challenged them after they went through the dark times of not, having doors closed on them or people looking upon them in a certain way because they were said to be a convicted felon in the United States.
What is it like traveling abroad with a commission? Have you
Well,
traveled abroad?
I have not uh, traveled, but I have done study on travel, and there are countries, definitely even Canada, and someone would probably say, "Gee, Mexico of all places." Yeah, I think, but Canada, asks that if you're a convicted felon, that you report in, to their, I guess it would be like their consulate of some sort, and let them know that you're in their country. And there are other countries, it's very accessible. just on, you can Google these things, as they say, and it'll tell you that what countries want convicted felons to report in should they visit that country. I believe that there are certain parameters to travel there. You may have to even be accepted in some cases before they allow you entry. And then again, to navigate the United States, there are certain restrictions here that I intend to, hone up on what states they are, and we can work more. Again, I was in closer touch with a group called Collateral Consequences, and they do a lot of work in this area about what states, what the different rights are from state to state. And they kept up with Illinois when some of the things that were happening with me, because they were pretty glad to know that the action of restoration of rights was alive and well in Illinois, because it hadn't been for some 50 years. And that's an important step for others just like myself that may have a federal conviction but need relief from that federal conviction in the state that they're in to be able to serve an elected office.
Do you have any idea if those states that do restore rights, are they both any party, or might they be more blue than red, or vice versa?
I couldn't, I'm sorry, I missed some of the question.
In those states where people could get their rights restored, do you have any idea if those states are red or blue
Oh,
usually?
well, I think it's a combination, to be quite honest. It's pretty much a mixed around the country, red and blue. I haven't seen where one state has, excuse me, laws that, um, red or blue states, if you will, that really has more of a, to say that, because some parties may say that the other party might be soft on crime and different things like that, and that is sometimes the case where those states may or could have a more stringent law against ex-offenders. But that's why this group that I've worked with them in the past has really gone after this, because again, these are ex-offenders. That means that they're not offending anymore, and yet they're being treated like they just did something.
And I do have a little bit of good news. In Chicago, the Small Business Advisory Council has worked with the legislature, and then they're they got $1 million allocated so that eventually they'll find a way to use that $1 million to help businesses hire ex-offenders and get tax breaks for hiring ex-offenders.
Very, very good news, and it's so important. I think that you know the state representative LaShawn Ford and his effort, in trying to get a lot of individuals back to work, and I think the big thing that he's after as well is that there should be, that choice and that talent should be available to people, to the voters and to other business people, um, and I remember again, here for myself, I remember the church that I serve in. Right after my offense, I had to, well, had completed the sentence, but they do background checks at my church for those that have to work with children. Well, I can only tell you that, I felt so uncomfortable. I didn't have, I didn't have a child offense or against children. I just had I had a felony conviction that made me feel less adequate at all. It's like, well, maybe that I will be judged that I shouldn't be around, doing security work for my church around kids, because I had a white collared crime, as they would call it, where it was a nonviolent offense. But, the guilt that you carry, no matter what it is, you just feel less adequate, about what you do. You feel less than, you do have the feel of being disenfranchised because of what you did and how people judge you or how they look at you or what they would think of you. And that can be tough sometimes.
Yes, if uh there really isn't the sentence of being sentenced for the rest of your life to for that crime. The sentence was passed, and then if you serve the sentence, then the sentence is over. It's not there was never any intention for this a sentence to last forever.
No. And I think that it really isn't. But, we tend to ask these questions about, and do background checks on people. And I think that we need a better understanding of what a background check should really mean. And if anything, we need to invest some time and effort into, if we want to look back on people and make sure that we're vetting them properly, then we need a better system about doing that. But I don't think we should have all these other things that's not afforded to them without some good reason or good rationale to go with it. Because there definitely is no rationale to go with why we're making people to continue to serve sentences when they're done, because that's what they're doing.
What about referendums? Were there ever any, do you know of any referendums to gauge a public opinion about this matter?
I can't tell you that I have. I think that is, my goodness, I think that's a very good idea. I think that we should ask. I mean, after all, we have lawmakers taking position for, you know, people that would have went to a referendum because they're speaking for people and the laws that they make that hinder people. So maybe some of those things should be out there and should be considered. I think that a referendum probably would be a very good thing, to be very honest. Because I think it gives a good opinion, uh, because you're asking people. Um, and when and again, I got, over time, I've gotten a few thousand people to come out and vote, and the votes went my way, and so I think that's a good gauge to say that, you know, at least some people or a good amount of people think that we should move on from those situations. And we've made good of it here, and some of the question that you asked me earlier about, what have the successes been? How we turned a community totally around and made it stronger and better and made better living for people. I think that's the best referendum that you can have. And certainly it's a good prove up system when you look at this. The litmus test is really good here in the city of Markham.
The pardon application, the federal pardon application, like, do you have to submit the evidence since you won the election by about 80%, then that's almost and if the voters did know about what had happened and they still voted for you, that's that's kind of like evidence too. Do you have to present evidence for with your application, or people's like people's references and what they you know what letters to help you?
Well, I have submitted a lot of personal documentation of many things that I've done since the sentence was completed. A lot of things that I worked on and went to school and additional schooling and education and trying to better myself and things I, to be quite honest, was already on pace to doing anyway and continued that. Um, but those support documents of different things I did in my life and different things that I've worked on. Um, I have submitted a lot of those um, things in terms of what the governor signing my right to Illinois. I submitted that back in 2018 when I submitted my application. But it goes back to what we were saying. All the documents that I submitted and all the proof that things are different for me, I'm still a needle in a haystack. You know, that something to me is, you know, I still don't think I'm, I don't think I'm anybody special, but I think that I'm putting in some of the work that they would kind of say that you should do or you should be to qualify within reason, I think. Um, and what else can you do? But I think the problem is the system and trying. There's some 15,000 applications that are in the system, minimum that I know of. There's that many, and when you have that kind of system, and then stop and think about it, what is the number that every 4 years that a president actually, he doesn't do thousands and thousands and thousands of commuting sentences and pardons and clemencies, every 4 years or even every year. So those applications sit there, and some are denied. I think I was able to finally look in a database and really kind of look at some of these have been denied, and probably rightfully so, because there's certain rules that apply that you can't apply too early. You have to have so much time, after your sentence is served. I think it's 5 years, and then you can apply. And I didn't apply to 2018. And then they have a vetting system to check that, you taking responsibility for, I think that's a big key. Um, you taking responsibility for what you did. And, that part, I think, the judges want to see it. I think the pardon system wants to see it. And rightfully so. I mean, that, uh, but, I obviously think too, though, at some point, after you acknowledge that, you can't stay there in life. You've got to try and, move on as a person. You want to acknowledge your wrongdoing in your past, but you don't want that to define you. And it can, it definitely can. And that's what's wrong with the system. But you do all that, and no one really, no one finds you. Where is my application at? I don't. It just when I go online to look it up, it just says pending. And I have reached out to uh, some of my legislators and congressional leaders to help me to get some attention.
So you submitted the federal pardon application in 2018.
I did.
And then what about the state? When did you submit that? When do you still remember?
The state, when I submitted the letters to the governor's office, that was in 2017 when I did that. I started working with the governor's office in Illinois. But then by 2018, I decided to go ahead and apply for a federal pardon because, I was still incapacitated as a mayor and I needed some help. And I had reached out in 2018 to President Biden and nothing worked out. So now, now I'm in the situation, I was in the situation where um, we were able to get to the governor, so I didn't remain disabled as a mayor-elect for a community. And so I've been pretty content about that. I'm grateful to be able to serve. And it's been an honor and a privilege to do that. But I just don't think the work is done with restoring rights to people. And definitely federally, I don't think the work is done. I think that there's more work to be done.
For those agencies that collaborated with you or are collaborating with you to change this, could you name some of the organizations or agencies that you are working with?
Well, I've only primarily worked with one agency, and that was just, I've worked with some of the legal team with the collateral consequences group. That's been my primary team that I work with. I've had my legal people work with theirs, and we did that during the time we were in touch with the governor's office. At the time was Governor Rauner, and we all worked together on that. And as far as here as of late, I've just gotten information of other advocacy groups that I intend to work with that do a lot of work with second chance groups. I think that that's important. And, some of them, they do more expungement summits and different things like that. They do a lot of local things. And I'd like to really contribute to both. But the biggest person I intend to work with in the future is going to be LaShawn Ford, the state representative. I'd like to work with him and Congressman Davis to keep that work up. Now, one of the people that I'm really kind of hoping to get a hold of is a congresswoman out of Boston. Her name is Ayanna Presley, and she is a real advocate for trying to fix clemency. And I think she's pretty disenchanted with it from the federal level, that there should be a different type of structure without disturbing the president's power or, authority. And I think that that's really what the problem is that, a lot of the leaders, congressional leaders, probably shy away from it. But let me tell you, there's no doubt about it when, these communities nationwide are affected by felony convictions. And it really has its places where it disables people. And it really creates other problems. That stigmatism is very strong in society. And we've got it. And I just think that it's not a good thing to continue to let it be there the way that it is. There needs to be more action and advocacy about fighting against that whole stigmatism.
So a governor could pardon someone or restore rights, and of course the president. What about mayors? What could mayors do in this capacity to for people as a second chance?
Well, I'm in a unique situation because because I've been so close to the ground over this issue. Um, but I'll be honest, I think that, just as I was describing the unfortunate landscape of the Southland and South Cook County, with some of past, these towns that had past, great historical history, that was just so prominent. And where it really went another direction. So now you wind up with leaders who have a lot of wounded people that are disenfranchised and don't have opportunity and don't have chances. And I know that there's a guy that in one of the neighboring communities, he struggled and he wanted to work on the school board and he could never get the chance to do it. And every time he goes to try and do it, someone uses his past against him. You know, when we started this program out today, one of the things I mentioned to you is that society and human nature um, it has a tendency to always want to have wants the upper hand or wants to have one up on another person. And so just because that disenfranchised community or um, underserved community, here comes someone that says, "Oh, I want to get on the school board to help my local community," and they're an underserved community. Well, here comes someone else in that underserved community that knows that that person has a record and uses it against them. And they might have been perfectly good to by now to go do something for the school board. But the law is out there, and even as bad as that community could be, and probably could use that guy's talent because he's wounded, and probably could do a pretty good job because he's way past the offense. He's not the same person. But the law's there, and then you get someone who they may be on the way to committing their crime. I don't know. I'm just saying it's real talk when you say those things. You never know where people are, but they're going to stop this guy who had a history, but he's done with it. But not according to the laws in Illinois, he's not because he can't get on the school board. And this other person who may have themselves geared up to get in there and be an opportunist for themselves. I'm just saying these things. I don't know if that's the case about somebody. You hope that people go out for good intention, but it isn't always that way when people sign up for these jobs. Um, I had to ask myself when I even was running for this position, what the heck am I doing? Because it's more than a notion to want to go out and take care of people, and you've got to really want to do these things. That's for sure.
Are you able to tell us what happened? Actually, did you just cash some checks that were mistakenly sent to you? And
Oh no, there was no mistake. I knew the guy that worked at the insurance company, and he knew me, and so he just, I had a common name, and he used the name, and sent checks to me, and I agreed to split the proceeds with them, and we just basically were stealing. And you don't think much of it in the dark, and it's no big deal. Who's going to know I took the money? But it's just wrong. The same way I said something else about human nature, I can equally say something about human nature and that kind of behavior is that people tend to think that it's in the dark and nobody will know. And we have to fight that other demon or that bad side of our nature. And some do better than others, and some make a bad decision that could bother them the rest of their lives.
well, it's often I hear that the worst demon to fight is yourself.
Yeah, yes, indeed. That is so true.
Well, Mayor Roger Agpawa of Markham, thank you so much for joining WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. There was a lot of insight and information, and we wished all the best to you.
Well, I was glad to be with you today, and anytime in the future, Markham and myself will always be available, and certainly for this cause. And certainly the cause of helping people in general. Markham wants to be a beacon for that as well as myself. So thank you for having me, and it's been a blessing to be able to talk to you today. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.